May 7th, the upcoming slate of post-Fox acquisition Disney movies was announced. This upcoming slate is as interesting for what it revealed as for what it didn't reveal. Case in point, it allows us to infer where Star Wars might be headed after Episode 9, and which of the trilogies in development will see the light of day. In this editorial, I will begin by briefly covering why release dates are charted out so many years in advance, and what this slate reveals about upcoming Marvel movies. Then, I'll explore at length what this could mean for Star Wars, more specifically for the Rian Johnson and Benioff and Weiss trilogies respectively, before concluding with other movies and points of interest, most notably Avatar. There are several reasons why they announce movies that won't premiere for so many years yet. Obviously, they must commit to release dates long enough in advance that exhibitors have time to do the necessary prep work for release, and licensees have the time to produce their content and bring it to market in coordination with the studio's marketing department. But you don't require several years for that. Biggest reason is that this is about the studio planting their flag on desired release dates, so that other studios can plan their own release schedules accordingly, preferably by staying well clear of those dates with competing titles. Of course, if another studio wants to open a major release on the same date, if they think, say Aquaman 2 or something, can beat out Avatar 2, or if they think Matt Reeves' Batman can beat out some future as of yet untitled Marvel movie, then nothing stops them from opening their movies on the exact same date that Disney now planted their flag on. They probably won't though. Hollywood got the message loud and clear in 2016, when Warner tried to muscle Batman v Superman into the May release date reserved for what was at the time known as Untitled Marvel Movie. Later, that Untitled Marvel Movie was announced to be Captain America Civil War, which was really the Avengers 2.5. Marvel further made it clear that they weren't moving from that date. If Warner wanted to duke it out in a head-to-head competition at the box office, then bring it on. On their own heads be it. This ended with Warner tucking their tail between their legs and moving away, which was the best call. So, this is basically Bob Iger planting his foot in the ground, saying mine, and then leaving a proverbial landmine for anyone daring to venture too near. Oh, and to be clear, when Disney announces something called Untitled Marvel Movie or Untitled Star Wars Movie, that does not mean they don't know which Marvel movie or which Star Wars movie will be released at that spot. They do. They just aren't ready to reveal that information to the public just yet. So, with those generalities out of the way, let's move on to what this means for Marvel, Star Wars, and everything else. From this release schedule, we can see that Marvel are planning 2 MCU movies for 2020 and 3 each for 2021 and 2022, so a total of 8 MCU movies in the foreseeable future. We know that Marvel are developing a Black Widow movie, an Eternals movie, a Shang-Chi movie, plus Black Panther 2 and Doctor Strange 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy 3. That's 6 of those 8 movies accounted for right there. So what of the remaining 2? Could it be Captain Marvel 2 or Ant-Man 3 to progress and complete their respective trilogies? Could it be Deadpool, Fantastic Four, or the X-Men, finally entering the MCU? That remains to be seen, but personally, I'm more excited about the prospect of the latter than the former. What is not included here is any co-productions with Sony, meaning Spider-Man movies. The complicating factor with Spider-Man is that Marvel and Sony's Spider-Man sharing deal ends with Spider-Man Far From Home. Unless Sony actively renews it with Marvel, Spider-Man will revert to Sony later this year, enabling Sony to put him into their Venomverse, but leaving him off limits for future MCU movies. Does Spider-Man have a future in the MCU still? We don't know, and if he doesn't, we probably won't find out until after the release of Far From Home. If the deal is renewed though, more Spider-Man movies will be added to this schedule. What won't be added are the movies Fox were developing prior to the acquisition, like Gambit. It was never happening. But enough Marvel talk. Let's move on to Star Wars. Bob Iger has on several occasions said that the Rise of Skywalker would be followed by a big screen hiatus for Star Wars, although there would still be new Star Wars installments on Disney Plus during that hiatus. Kathleen Kennedy said that too, as you'd expect, because Bob Iger has previously made it abundantly clear that where Star Wars is concerned, the buck stops with him. Well, now we know how long that big screen hiatus will be. 3 years. After The Rise of Skywalker, the next, and as of yet untitled Star Wars movie will open on December 16th of 2022. To those eagerly awaiting a new Star Wars movie, that might seem like forever. But do keep in mind that outside of modern comic book movies, a 3-year gap from one movie to the next is pretty normal. It was 3 years between each movie in both the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, so this intentional hiatus is really no longer than what was traditionally the normal production cycle for a sequel. This untitled Star Wars movie to be released in 2022 will be followed by another untitled Star Wars movie in December of 2024, and yet another one in December of 2026. As such, it would appear that Disney just tacitly announced a new trilogy, more specifically, one new trilogy. That is interesting, because from earlier comments made, it would appear that 2 separate trilogies were in development, one by Rian Johnson and the other by David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creators, and depending on who you ask, more recently destroyers of HBO's Game of Thrones. So either one trilogy will be released after the other, meaning after 2026, or, and this is more likely, one of the trilogies was scrapped. Based on the fact that Bob Iger is the one that first mentioned the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, and that he's mentioned this trilogy in several later statements, without ever referencing Rian Johnson even once. I would imagine that it is the Benioff and Weiss trilogy that will go into production, while the Rian Johnson trilogy has been pushed back or into oblivion. But even if that is the case, they'll never admit it. On the contrary, Kathleen Kennedy, figurehead of Lucasfilm, did say that Rian Johnson was working in tandem with Benioff and Weiss, and that they were charting out the next decade of Star Wars on film together. There will obviously be many more Star Wars movies after these 3, and for all we know, a Rian Johnson trilogy could be squeezed into the slate later on, or be put into production after 2026. That could happen. But at Star Wars Celebration, we were told that the future of Star Wars would be decided in May. Since this release schedule now has been announced, I would be inclined to believe the decision has already been made, and by the looks of it, they are proceeding with one trilogy. But Rian Johnson's trilogy was announced last year, and some kind of legally binding agreement with him was likely entered in conjunction with that, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's kept around in some capacity, maybe to consult on or produce, hell, maybe even direct an installment of the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. They are, after all, writers, and may never have been up for actually directing their trilogy. That is just speculation on my part though. We'll see what ultimately transpires. But if these untitled Star Wars movies are indeed the Benioff and Weiss trilogy, I have 2 overriding hopes for it, and 1 challenge for them. First and foremost, I hope they've learned the right lessons from the backlash to where they've taken Game of Thrones. That is to say, no more undoing of previous character development, and no more subversion of expectations by snoking the very characters the audience wants to learn more about. Secondly, go Old Republic, but have some threads from there build towards the prequel era, and the original era at that. If they get it right, I believe they can win the despondent and disappointed fans back over still. I hope they do, and I even have a challenge for them to that effect. I expect your trilogy to suck. Subvert that. But there is more to talk about on the Disney slate, so let's look into some of the other movies. There is a lot of other untitled live action and animation, and all of which it's hopeless to speculate about, so let's focus on the genre stuff. Another Indiana Jones movie is scheduled for 2021, but that's the only one. If it should deliver at the box office, sequels will come, but it would appear that as of now, Disney are not confident enough in their current take on Indiana Jones, whatever it turns out to be, to go all in and announce a franchise on it. The biggest surprise for me was seeing New Mutants on the slate at all. Can't they just dump that to Hulu already? Or better yet, scrap the whole thing? I mean, they can't even do reshoots anymore. The movie was shot 3 years ago, and the kids have all aged out of their parts. They don't look like that anymore. With the Fox acquisition, Disney got Avatar, and in 2021, 23, 25, and 27, the years without Star Wars movies, Disney will release an Avatar movie in the December slot, otherwise reserved for Star Wars. The plan is obviously for Disney to dominate the holiday season with one franchise or the other. This is pretty aggressive scheduling though, and it assumes Avatar 2 will be a hit, more than a decade after the release of the original Avatar, a movie which honestly didn't hold up all that well outside of the at the time revolutionary 3D experience it offered, and that no one is asking for sequels to. It will be interesting to see how Avatar 2 will perform when it is released. Of the other Fox properties on the docket, the one I am the most pleased to see still get a release is Death on the Nile, the sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. I enjoyed that movie, and since all the original Poirot stories already have been adapted to perfection with David Suchet in the lead, I welcome Kenneth Branagh's alternate take, just like I welcome John Malkovich's alternate take, although that has nothing to do with Disney. I wouldn't have minded if further sequels to it were also announced, but hey, that can still be filled in later. This slate is after all only the slate of this moment. As time goes by, more movies will be added to it. What I want to see added are more movies released under the Fox banner, movies that must be rated R. That is something this slate has way too little of, and could use more of. What I hope the most after seeing this slate is that Disney will put the Fox labels to better use as time goes by. They have them now, so use them for all they're worth. Put out some more medium-budgeted R-rated movies as well. Not everything has to be 4-quadrant blockbusters all the time. Let me know your thoughts on that, and the schedule for Star Wars and Marvel movies in the comments.
If you like this video, then please help share it and share your opinion in the comments. Midnight's Edge aims to give the most comprehensive analysis and commentary on genre culture and entertainment. If you would like to see more of our videos, then please subscribe, hit the bell icon, and remember to indicate that you would like to be notified when new videos are uploaded. If you really like what we do, then please support us on Patreon until a better alternative comes along, or send us a direct donation through PayPal. Also check out our sister channel Midnight's Edge After Dark for live shows and other rants. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and stay tuned for more here at Midnight's Edge.